it's Karen Burniston here with my monthly designer challenge video. The theme this month is Holiday House. I challenged the team to use our Holiday House die set for a card of any theme, any time of the year. I am so looking forward to fall and especially the cooler weather that comes with it, so I chose an autumn theme to my card. I used a total of 5 dies for this project, and you will find the links to those products in the description box below. I'll start first by constructing my base card using our tag book pop-up. For papers, I'm going to be using Maya Designs Autumn Poem Collection Pack. So those have some beautiful designs, and I just went stash diving to find a piece of brown cardstock that matched. I'll start by cutting 2 of the big tags out of that cardstock. Now I just chose to save a little paper and do it out of one strip, even though that meant that some of the tag got cut off of the second one. For this project, those ends are going to be removed. The tag book pop-up is one of those designs where the mechanism can be cut out of pattern paper as long as that pattern paper isn't too flimsy. So this is nice, sturdy, double-sided pattern paper and will work well for the mechanism. Now I need 2 of those pieces. The hinge piece is what's used to join the 2 tags together, and that actually has 3 folds in it. So there's one fold that's right up the middle. That one's easy to find. You can just do the ends. Then I like to roll the piece between my fingers to roll up and find the outer 2 folds. And what that will end up with is a gusseted fold for that piece. I definitely recommend glue for assembling the pop-ups. I'm using my LINECO neutral pH adhesive in my fine tip bottle. We do sell both of those items on our website. And what I'm going to do is use that hinge to join these 2 tags together. And I decided to attach the hinge on the outside of the tags where I knew that it would be covered by a later piece. But it will work either way, so you can decide on a case-by-case basis whether you want to attach your hinge to the inside of the tags or to the outside of the tags. But turning the second piece like a book and on top of the other one, then I can make sure that I get it lined up perfectly with the other side when I attach the other half of the hinge. And I'm using the outer 2 folds of the hinge to line up with the end of the tags so that when it is joined, there is actually a gusset between the tags. Okay, the mechanism pieces is a pretty easy fold. I'm going to find the one that's in the outer sections about halfway down the tag, fold that over and pinch it. Then there's another fold that goes all the way across the piece, and it's between the tag and the square. And I can pinch that fold down as well. Then I'm going to open the piece up, and I want to make sure this outer section is behind the tag. So I'm going to push that behind the tag while I pop these 2 folds to come forward. Then I like to put my thumb under the arms and across the tag, and then my fingers behind it so that I can isolate just that little pivot point right there next to the tag. Then I'm going to flip it around and I'm going to work the pivot point next to the square. So just those little pivot points right there. This one now is going to be a crisp mountain, and that is the fold of the tag book. So you can see there I've done half of it. And then there's a tag that attaches them together. That one folds to the back like a mountain fold. All right, now I'm going to do that again. So same exact thing. I find the fold that's about midway through the tag. I fold it down and pinch it. I make sure it's behind the tag. Then I fold the one that's between the square and the tag all the way across the entire piece and bring it back out. I pop these to start coming outward. I put my thumb underneath and in front of the tag, my fingers behind the tag, and that allows me to bring them together and work that little pivot point next to the tag. These become mountains. This little pivot point next to the square becomes a valley, and the tab folds down. And now I have the other half of the tag book. For attaching the mechanisms to the tags, you just use adhesive in that outer flat section. So that outer area from the first fold out to the end, I add my strong adhesive all over that area. And then it is designed so that the rounded corners of the mechanism line up perfectly with the rounded corners of the tag. And it will also go top to bottom. So it's really easy to line that up perfectly. Then I'm going to do the same on the other side. So the adhesive goes out in the flat area around the tag, stopping when I get to the fold. And then I pick up my tag book and I add the rounded corners of the mechanism right to the rounded corners of the tag itself and press that whole area down. And then the last thing to do to get this mechanism working is to join them to each other. And that's what the little small half tabs are for in the center. You add glue to each one of those. They sit side by side and attach to the other half of the mechanism. So just give those a good pinch. Once they're connected, you'll be able to close everything down. Normally from here, I would just start decorating the pop-up. However, I am going to elongate this card so that it can accommodate the holiday house put on the pop-up. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my scissors and remove the excess tag from both sides. So usually before I start filming these designer challenge videos, I make myself a little go-by out of some, inexpensive and usually the ugliest color cardstock I have, just to see if the technique's going to work. So I had already figured out that I want the length of this card to be about 7¼ inches, 7 3/8, 7½, somewhere in there, somewhere at least 7¼ It can be longer. But what I'm doing here is I'm just using the grid that's on my mat to figure out how far the new tag is going to overlap the existing card to extend it out to 7¼ inches. So then I'm just going to add my glue all over the front, just in the cardstock area. So I didn't put any glue on the part of the pop-up that's sticking out, just in the cardstock area. I add my glue, then I can attach a tag so that it sticks out to elongate my card to about 7¼ inches. Then I just flip the card over and repeat that process for the other side, and I'll be able to use the first tag to make sure that I get the second one lined up in the same location. 7¼ is really the minimum width to hide the holiday house when it's up on the pop-up, but I could have gone longer. I could have gone out to 8½ inches and still used a slimline envelope. Now I'm using the tag itself to cut some end pieces about 2 inches wide, and those are going to be used on the front and the back of the card to cover up the hinge that was used to put it together. A nice thing about the tag book pop-up die is it does include all of the dies you need to decorate the mechanism as well. So there is a die that will cut the reinforcing and decorative pieces to fit the arms of the pop-up. And especially since I used pattern paper, I definitely want to add those. For the long ones, I put the adhesive on the pop-up itself, and that way I can avoid that little cutout that's in that mechanism. For the short ones, it doesn't matter as much. I can just put the glue on the back of the short ones and then attach them to the pop-up. The die set also includes a large hole protector decorative piece, so I can put that out on the ends of the big tags. And then there are also small tags and squares to fit the pop-up itself. There is also a small hole protector to fit the smaller tag. However, I didn't need it on this left tag because the holiday house would cover it. Okay, time to move on to decorating, and I am going to start with the holiday house die set. The roof and the smaller house die both have emboss features in them. So if you run those through your machine with an embossing sandwich before or after you cut it, then you'll get those raised embossed areas that really come out when you brush them with ink. And you can also sponge through the dies to use them as stencils if you want a crisper look to that pattern. Okay, starting the assembly by adding the trim piece to the roof. I just want some glue around the inside edges, and then that trim piece will fit that perfectly. Okay, so normally I would glue this right up to the top of that house piece. However, I am attempting to keep the entire holiday house smaller than 3 inches in height because that's the height of my card. So to make that happen, I'm going to have to just bring that roof down a little bit. So I'm going to trim a little bit off of the house piece. Then my adhesive goes up around the top 3 edges, and I use that new top of the house to line up the roof so that even with that little point sticking up a little bit higher, I can keep the entire assembly below 3 inches. To give the house more of a little three-dimensional feel, I like to have the middle house, the brick house, hang down a little bit lower than the main house. And I am being mindful of that 3-inch limitation that I have because of my card size. Okay, from here it is just taking the pieces out of the holiday house set and finishing out the house. So there's a roof trim piece for the brick house. There are window backers and window frames to be able to add those tall windows on either side of the house. I'm going to add little hearts. There's a heart in the set, so I've cut those out of the pink pattern paper. I'm going to add those in the center of the windows. Then there is a door and door frame that I'm going to add to the brick house. And finally finish it up with a glittery wreath. And speaking of that wreath die, I thought it would also work well on the big tags, so I've cut 2 more out of gold glitter. Now I can add my finished holiday house to the left tag, and I'm just putting glue up to the pivot point because that's as far as that house will go on that tag. And what I can do is set it down into that glue and then carefully close the card. And that way I can check the location top to bottom to make sure that it's staying within the limits of the card on the height, and then adjust as necessary. So I can tell that the point of my roof was sticking out just a little bit, so I need to slide that down a bit and then check again. That is why using glue for that is a great choice, because you do have the ability to slide things around. Now, as you can imagine, that base card, an extended tag book with the holiday house, could be done in any colors for any theme. Since I'm doing autumn, I chose these 3 decorator dies. From the Haunted Tiny House add-ons, I cut fences and assembled some pumpkins. From Word Set 7, I cut Welcome Autumn, inked the bottom half of it, and then attached it to one of the frames that comes included in the tag book pop-up. And then I'm going to glue that to my project now. Okay, I held the fence up to the project to kind of figure out about where I should bend it and then where I should trim it to be able to fit up and over those arms at the bottom. And then I'm just going to use my glue to attach it. And then I just repeat that process for the other side. For trees and leaves, I'm using the Tiny Trees pop-up. So for the one that's going to be 3D, I needed the slotted tree and the notched tree. And the notched tree goes into the slot. So at the top of the slot, there's a branch that folds over that can be glued to the tree to seal the slot. But I don't want to seal up that slot until I get the notched tree inside. So I'd get the notch in at the bottom, make sure that the notched tree is centered, then I can seal up the slot. So I add a little adhesive to that fold over branch and then attach it. So what that does is it seals the slot, so that now you've got these 2 trees kind of locked together, but that they can still open and close. So what I can do with this 3D tree is take the back 2 tree halves and essentially straddle the center fold with them, gluing them down so that that tree can open and close with the card. So the trunk part's glued down to those squares in the center. I check that everything can open and close, and then I'm going to go in there and add some spots of glue to get the back branches glued down as well, because I really don't want those to be able to lift up and tangle with anything else. For the side trees, I'm only going to use the notched tree. So I'm not using the slotted tree. They're not going to be 3D. It's just going to be a flat tree. And I just need to make sure that I only use the adhesive at the top and the bottom, where it will span across the pop-up and attach to those arms. And then I repeat that process on the other side. So figuring out which branches and trunk will hit the pop-up, I add the glue in those locations and then just pinch that to attach to the pop-up. As I close the card, I can see that I probably should have put those trees just a little bit lower or be willing to prune some branches off the top. However, mine are close enough. To disguise the mechanism that's at the bottom of those trees, I'm going to add some partial fence halves to that 3D tree in the middle. And then that one I really do have to check and make sure that it is going to fold down and not get tangled up in the other 2 trees, because I could make those fences a little shorter if I needed to. I can disguise the mechanism at the base of those trees by adding pumpkins and leaves. And I just want to close the card as I add each piece and make sure that I haven't created a catch point. And then I can move the pieces as necessary until I get a good pleasing arrangement with my pumpkins and my leaves, and nothing is catching as the card opens and closes. In the background, I decided to add some partial fences out on the ends. I can just pick up the piece after gluing that on and trim away the excess fence. And then the tag book includes a beaded border that will fit top to bottom across that tag, and that will be perfect to disguise the seam between the 2 tags. And then for a place to sign the card, I'm adding a white rectangle cut with the tag book pop-up to that right side. And that finishes out my interior decoration, and now I just need to work on the front. I always decorate the inside of my pop-up cards first so that I can just use leftover materials and styling to do the front as a simple lead-in. So in this case, the same fences, trees, leaves, pumpkins, a repeat of that frame out of the glitter, this time filling it with the words Happy Fall. So definitely not doubling my work, just taking the leftover materials and making a simple lead-in with repeated elements. And then as a final bit of decoration, I'm going to tie a ribbon knot through each of the big tags. And I just went stash diving and found some ribbon that had those pretty fall colors. I'm not tying the two tags together. You could do that, but I don't do that. I'm just decoratively adding ribbon ties to each end. My recommended envelope size for this elongated tag book would be a number 10 business envelope, a slimline envelope, and that will be perfect to mail it. It would probably go for a single stamp if I eliminated the ribbon ties, but because I do have those ribbons and makes it a little bulkier, I probably would choose to use the non-machinable stamp to mail this one. The idea with these designer challenge videos is to spark an idea. And so in this case, you really could customize this to be any time of the year, add a little bit of foliage on the trees, change out the colors and the words, and you've got something that can be used year round. I mean, I see Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day with hearts on the trees. It could even be a patriotic card. So you really could take this idea and run with it. Check the description box below this YouTube video for product links, as well as a link to the blog post where you will find holiday house inspiration by our very talented design team. Thanks for watching. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBurniston.com, where you can purchase these dies as well as find links to our other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.